This is Mejabin Fatima, Commerce lecturer at Elizabeth High School and Junior College. So in this session we are going to start 9th chapter, that is international trade. Now let's proceed with our chapter. So in the previous chapter, internal trade and types of internal trade were discussed in details. The contents of this chapter will explain about the international trade, procedure to be followed for exporting and importing goods or to from another country. So in our previous chapter we have learnt about the internal trade, right? So in that we have learnt that internal trade is nothing but the trade which will takes place within the boundaries of the country, or trade or exchange of goods and services will takes place within the boundaries of the country. So that is nothing but the internal trade. Now let's see what is external trade in our international trade in our 9th chapter. So as discussed in the previous chapter, foreign trade or external trade refers to buying and selling of goods and services between nationals of different countries across political frontiers. So here international trade is nothing but the trade between the countries, or we can also say that buying and selling of goods and services between nationals of different countries across political frontiers. It is the trade between agencies of the government of different countries. Countries in the world depend on one another for obtaining the goods which are required by their people. Such dependence creates the need for exchange, may it be in form of goods or services among them. The trader who is purchasing goods from another country is called importer, and the trader who is supplying goods to the consumers in the other country is called exporter. So international trade is nothing but it is a platform where one or more countries are coming into a contract with each other, where they are exchanging the goods and services, or where they are taking their business activity up to a different level, we can say. So here actually there are two persons who are involved, that is the trader who is purchasing the goods and the trader who is selling the goods. So here the trader who is purchasing the goods from the another country, he is called as importer, or the person who is selling the goods to the another country, here he is called as exporter. Now let's have a glance at the distinction between home trade and foreign trade. So when we will see home trade, as we have discussed, it is the trade within the country. The exchange of goods and services will take place within the boundaries of the country, whereas in foreign trade, here it is the trade with other countries. So it refers to the trade or exchange of goods and services between different countries. And the next point is, it does not involve any exchange of currency. So here under home trade or internal trade, here it doesn't need to have a exchange of currencies. But here under foreign trade, where the exchanging of goods and services will take place in a foreign platform or between the different countries, then obviously it involves exchange of currencies, because every country is having its own currency. So due to that, here this process will involve exchange of currencies. Here under home trade, there are no restrictions. No restrictions are there. The buyer can sell his goods and the customer can buy the goods. But here under foreign trade, here they are having the restrictions. They have to follow certain rules and regulations, according to which only they can sell their goods and they can buy the goods. So here there are several restrictions. And here under home trade, the transport cost, risk are less. Here the transport cost, risk are less, because here the trade is happening between the boundaries of the country. But here the transport cost one more and risk are many. So here so many risks are involved. Now under home trade again, movement of goods depend upon the development of internal transport system. So according to the internal transport system, that is roadways or railways, according to that system only the movement of goods and services will take place. But whereas in foreign trade, the movement of goods takes usually by roadway, railway, airway and waterway. So here all the four measures of transportations are being used for foreign trade. Now let's see what is the importance. No country in the world is self-sufficient. In other words, no country can produce all the goods it requires. No country can live in economic isolation. This situation where one country is dependent on another country has created the need for international trade. So here we can say that why it is important, why the international trade is important for us, because no country in the world is self-sufficient. Every country is dependent on other country for some goods and services. So in other words, no country can produce all the goods it does require, and no country can live economically isolate. So under this situation where one country is dependent on another country for some exchange of goods and services, this has created the need for international trade. Nature endows each country with different types of natural resources. Some countries are more suitably placed to produce certain goods in large numbers economically. Thus, each country of the world specializes in the production of goods it can produce at the lowest cost. It sells its surplus production to other countries and purchases goods required by it from those countries. So every country is having its own specialization, we can say, where it's producing the thing that is bulky in quantity, and here each country in the world which is specializes in the production of goods it produces will be at low cost, and that country will sell its surplus production to other countries and will purchase the goods which is required by that country from the other countries. Thus, all the countries in the world have to be dependent upon one another for meeting all their requirements. So, in order to meet their requirements, every country is dependent on another country. Now, let's have a look at the benefits of international trade. So, it will lead to a better use of available resources. Whatever the resources we are having, we can use that resources in a better way, and it reduces wastage of resources. Here, there is no wastage of resources. It equalizes the prices of goods throughout the world and irons out the wide fluctuations. It helps countries to sell their goods which they have in surplus and buy goods which are in short supply. So, for some countries, this international trade will help to sell the goods which they have in surplus, and they can buy the goods which are in short supply for them. It provides an opportunity to the developing countries for importing the needed technologies and in exchange for their imports. It creates cordial relationship between the people of different countries and leads to cultural advancement and international peace. It brings out international division of labor and specialization. It leads to increase in the income of people and thereby raises their standard of living. It increases employment opportunities and foreign exchanges reserves. It involves economic problems such as depression and underemployment and poverty, and augments production and consumption. It creates healthy consumption. So, when we are speaking about the international trade, it also helps the people of different countries to mingle with each other, and it will also lead to the international peace. And here it will give the employment opportunities, and here it will also give employment opportunity to all the persons who are unemployed. And it will also solve the economic problems like depression, underemployment and poverty, and augments production and consumption. Let's see what is the procedure and formality of export. The export trade is concerned with the sale of surplus goods to other countries. It plays a significant role because of its role in securing a favorable balance of trade and in earning the much needed foreign exchange. The volume of export trade of a country indicates the degree of economic development of that country. So, export trade, it is concerned with the sale of surplus goods to the other countries who are in requirement. So, as per the export control rules which are in force in India, an export transaction has to pass through the following stages. So, there are certain stages according to the export control rules which are in force in India. So, according to that, there are some stages. Let's see the stages. So, first one is enquiries and quotations. The export trade starts with the receipt of enquiry from the buyer. An inquiry is written request from him seeking information regarding the price and other services. The inquiry may be received directly or through the indent firm. Quotations are a reply to such an inquiry. In quotations, all the details asked for in inquiry are to be furnished. Price, time, method of delivery, method of packing are indicated in them. So the first stage is enquiries and quotations. So under enquiry, the name itself is showing that in this stage the trader will enquire about the goods. So here the export trade starts with the receipt of enquiry from the buyers. So here from the buyer, the seller will receive the enquiry receipt in which the buyer is asking or in which the buyer is seeking information regarding the price and other services. And here in reply to these enquiries, the seller has to send the quotation to the buyer. Under that quotation, he should answer all the questions. He should answer all the questions which were there in the enquiry. So here in quotations, all the details asked in the enquiries are to be furnished, like price, time, method of the delivery and method of packing. That all should be indicated in the quotations. The next stage will be orders or indents. If the buyer is satisfied with regard to the details applied in quotations, he places an indent. An indent is an offer made by a foreign buyer to buy goods. An indent may be an open indent or closed indent. If that is accepted by the exporter, then it becomes an order. The indent contains all the details in respect of the goods required as well as various other instructions with regard to shipping, packing, etc. So here under the next orders and indent stage, here if the buyer is satisfied with all the details which a seller has sent through quotation, then he can place an indent. So an indent is nothing but it is an offer which is made by a foreign buyer to buy the goods, and an indent may be open indent or closed indent. If that indent is accepted by the exporter, then it becomes an order. So an indent will contain all the details respect of goods required as well as various other instructions in regard of shipping, packing, etc. Now let's see next stage, that is securing the license. Export of goods from India is controlled under the Import and Export Control Act. So this exportation of goods in India will be controlled by the Import and Export Control Act. Goods covered by controls cannot be exported without an export license. So every good which is being exported, that must have the export license. Certain commodities are kept in the open general license list. The exporters are permitted to export these commodities freely during a definite period. If the goods do not fall under OGL, then he has to apply for an export license to an appropriate authority by paying the prescribed fees. So there are some of the commodities or certain commodities which are kept under open general license list. So here the exporters are permitted to export these commodities freely within the definite time. But if the goods do not fall under OGL, that is open general license, then the exporter has to apply for the export license to an appropriate authority by paying the prescribed fee. Then the next stage will be fulfilling exchange regulations. Under the Foreign Exchange Regulation Act, the exporter has to submit a declaration that he will surrender foreign exchange to the extent of the full export value of the goods to the Reserve Bank of India within the prescribed time. The exporter has to furnish full particulars of the value of goods, the method by which the payment is expected, etc. in the prescribed form and submit them in the custom office and also with the foreign exchange bank. So here the exporter has to fulfill all the exchange regulations. So under Foreign Exchange Regulation Act, the exporter has to submit the declaration that he will be surrendered to foreign exchange to the extent to the full export value of the goods to the Reserve Bank of the India within the prescribed time. And here the exporter has to fulfill all the particulars, and here the exporter has to furnish full particulars of the value of goods and the method by which he is receiving the payment, and that should be prescribed in the form, and he should submit that form in the custom office and in the foreign exchange bank. The next stage will be letter of credit. The next step in the export procedure relates to the demanding of the letter of credit from the importer. That means before sending the goods, the exporter must be satisfied with the credit worthiness of the importer. In some cases, only a bank reference may be considered sufficient. In the case of new buyers, the deposit of full price in advance may be demanded by the exporter. So here the letter of credit should be shown by the buyer to the seller. So in short, we can say that before sending the goods, the exporter must be satisfied with the credit worthiness of the importer. So in some cases, only a bank reference may be considered. He means here the buyer has to show the bank reference to the seller, and in case of new buyers, they must deposit the full amount as advance, and that may be demanded by the exporter. The next one will be shipping order. After satisfying himself as to the credit worthiness of the importer, the exporter enters into an agreement with the shipping company for hiring space in a ship for sending the goods to the port of the importer's choice. The shipping company issues shipping order giving instruction to the captain of the ship to receive on board the vessel the specified quantity of goods from the importer. So if the seller is satisfied here, or exporter is satisfied, then, or if the exporter is satisfied with the credit worthiness of the importer, then the exporter will enter into the agreement. Then the exporter will enter into an agreement with the shipping company for hiring a space for a ship for sending his goods to the importer. And here the shipping company issues shipping order, and it will give instruction to the captain of the ship to receive the board on the vessel and specified quantity of the goods from the exporter. The next stage will be exchange rate. The rate at which the currency of the country is exchanged for currency of another country is known as exchange rate. So exchange rate is nothing but it is a rate at which the currency of one country is exchanged for the currency of the another country. So the exporter must fix with his bank the rate at which importer's payment will be converted into the currency of the exporting country, with a view to avoid losses arising on account of fluctuations in foreign exchange rates. So here the exporter must fix with his bank the rate at which the importer's payment will be converted into the currency of the exporting country. By doing this, the exporter can avoid losses which can arise on account of fluctuations in foreign exchange rates. Then the next stage will be packing and forwarding. Packing should be compact and should be such that the cargo occupies minimum space in the ship to save freight. Special instruction given by the importer should be followed in this regard. Packing should be done in such a way that it ensures safety as well as economy. After the goods are packed, distinctive marks showing the name of the importer and the port of destination should be printed on each bundle. This is done for the purpose of easy identification. So packing should be done in such a way that it should occupy a minimum space in the ship to save the freight, and special instructions should be given by the importer, and special instructions which were given by the importer must be followed, and packing must be done in such a way that it will ensure a safety as well as economy. And after the goods are packed, there will be distinctive marks which will show the name of the importer and the port of destination, and port of destination should be printed on each bundle. So this all things will be done for the purpose for the easily identification. Then the next stage will be customs formalities. At this stage, the exporter has to observe certain custom formalities. The exporter has to fill the shipping bill in triplicate. The other forms are to be attached to the shipping bill. So the next stage will be the custom formality, and exporter has to observe the custom formalities. Next will be mate's receipt. If the goods are delivered to the dock, a dock receipt is given to the exporter. When the goods are directly handed over the captain of the ship or his assistant called mate, he issues a mate's receipt. So if the goods they are delivered at the dock, then a dock receipt should be given to the exporter. If the goods are handed over to the captain of the ship or his assistant, that is called as mate, then he will issue the mate's receipt. Then the next one will be bill of lading. The bill of lading is an official receipt of the shipping company acknowledging the receipt of the goods on board. It is a document of title as to goods. The importer cannot take delivery of the goods without procuring a bill of lading. A bill of lading may be either clean bill of lading or closed bill of lading. So here the bill of lading, it is an official receipt of the shipping company which is acknowledging the receipt of the goods on board, and it is the document of title as to goods. The importer cannot take delivery of the goods without producing the bill of lading. So here, in order to have the goods, the importer must also have the bill of lading. A bill of lading may be either clean bill of lading or closed bill of lading. Clean bill will indicate the bundles which are good in condition at the time of loading, and if the bill for the changes of the carrying the goods is to be paid by the importer at the port of destination, the bill of lading is marked freight forward. When the bill bears remarks such as broken or damaged, then it is called the closed bill. So if the goods are clean and good at the time of landing, at the time of loading, then that will be the clean bill of lading. But if the goods are damaged or broken, then that bill will be the closed bill. So here this bill of lading will be the proof of an agreement between the shipping company and the exporter. Then the next stage will be insurance of goods. As goods entering into the international trade are exposed to perils of sea, they should be properly insured. This is to be done by purchasing a marine insurance policy from an insurance company. The policy has to be sent to the importer along with the bill of lading and other documents. So here the exporter must have the marine insurance so that he can save the goods, or if the goods get damaged during the time of traveling, then that can be covered by marine insurance. So this has to be done by taking a marine insurance policy from an insurance company, and the policy has to be sent to the importer along with the bill of lading and other documents. Next one will be certificate of origin. The certificate is the declaration testifying the origin of exports. Some countries give preferential treatment to friendly nations in the matter of payment of customs of duty. In order to enable the importer to get the benefit of lower tariff, certificate of origin has to send to them. This certificate is issued by the authorized chamber of commerce or trade council. So there is a certificate of origin which is the declaration testifying the origin of exports, and this certificate will be issued by the authority chamber of the commerce of or trade council. The next one will be consular invoice. The customs authorities generally take much time in assessing the value of goods and determining the amount of duty to be charged. To avoid this delay, the exporter gets a consular invoice which enables the importer to obtain prompt clearance of goods after they reach the port of destination. So the custom authorities, they will take much time in accessing the value of goods and determining the amount of duty to be charged. So to avoid this delay, the exporter should have the consular invoice which will enable the importer to obtain prompt clearance of goods when they reach at the port of destination. The next one will be preparation of invoice. After all the formalities are complied with, the exporter has to prepare an invoice. So after all the formalities are done, then the exporter has to prepare another form, that is an invoice. This invoice is prepared in triplicate and must be based on the price and terms previously agreed upon. The next one will be securing payment. The final step in the export procedure is to secure payment in settlement of the transaction. The exporter can receive the payment in different ways. So here that is nothing but the payment. So this is the final step of export procedure, and it is to secure the payment in settlement of the transaction. So this was all about the procedure and formalities of export. Now let's have a look at procedure and formalities of import. So when goods are purchased from foreign countries and brought down to the country of the buyers, it is import trade. There is a procedure for importing goods from a foreign country. So the first one is procurement of license. An importer is not free to import whatever he wants. No goods can be imported into our country without valid license. So as we have discussed, there should be a valid license. They must have the valid license in order to import the goods from other countries. So here the importer is not free to import whatever he wants. He should have the valid license, and no goods can be imported without having the license. An importer can import goods under a general license or an individual license. The general license is one which is used for imports from any country, whereas individual license applies to specific countries. So here the importer must have any one of the license, that is general license or specified license. So general license, that is nothing but one country. So general license is nothing but it can be used for imports from any country, whereas in individual license it applies to the specific countries. The next step will be the obtaining exchange. After obtaining the import license, the arrangements are made for obtaining the necessary amount of foreign exchange. An application has to be made to the exchange control authorities to release the necessary foreign exchange. This application has to be endorsed by a foreign exchange bank. So the next stage will be obtaining the import license. So the arrangements should be done for obtaining the necessary amount of foreign exchange. So an application has to be made to the exchange control authority to release the necessary foreign exchange. The next one will be indent or order. The importer then places an order for the goods that he requires. This order is called indent. The indent contains instruction to the exporter with regard to the quality and quantity of goods, the method of forwarding of goods, nature of packing, method of payment, grade, price, etc. The indent is prepared in duplicate. The indents are of three types, that is open indent, closed indent and confirmatory indent. So the next step, as we have discussed in the procedure and formality of exporter also, here also same indent is nothing but the order, and that indent should contain the instructions to the exporter with regard to the quality and quantity of goods, packing of goods, nature of packing and method of payment, etc. And this indent should be prepared in triplicate, and there are actually three types of indents, that is open indent, closed indent and confirmatory indent. The next one will be the letter of credit. The importer has to prove its credit worthiness to the exporter. So as we have learnt in the exporter formalities and procedure, here also importer has to submit the credit worthiness to the exporter. For this, he has to send a letter of credit to the exporter. A letter of credit is issued by the bank in the importer's country in favor to the exporter. The bank gives an undertaking that the bills of exchange drawn on importer by the exporter will be honored. The next one will be procuring shipping documents. After the goods are shipped by the exporter, he sends an advice notice to the importer. The exporter also draws a bill of exchange on the importer. One document such as invoice, insurance policy, bill of lading, consular invoice are attached to the bill of exchange. So we have learned about all these types of bills, right? So the exporter has to attach such bills like invoice, insurance policy, bill of lading, consular invoice and bill of exchange. These all must be attached and sent to the importer by the exporter. Therefore, it is called as the documentary bill, and it is forwarded to the importer through the exporter's bank. The next step will be the clearing of goods. After taking possession of shipping documents, the importer can take delivery of goods after complying with the following formalities. So after complying with the formalities, the importer can take back the goods. So the first formality is that the importer has to obtain the delivery order from the shipping company. This order is given by putting endorsement on the back of the bill. After obtaining the delivery order, the importer has to submit 3 copies of bill of entry. When the importer has not received particulars of the goods in order to fill up the bills of entry, he has to fill a document called bill of site. He has to make a declaration to the effect that he is unable to give a full description of the bills of the goods on board. For releasing the goods, the importer has to fill another application form. Then he has to pay certain dock dues, etc. to the port trust office. Then they issue port trust dues receipt. So these all were the formalities which an importer has to do in order to take the goods. The next one will be the delivery of goods. After examining the bill of entry, and application to import is endorsed by port trust authorities, the customs office permits the importer to take possession of imported goods. If any duties are levied, the importer is required to pay duty as calculated by the custom authority. So here, after examining all the bills of entry and application, here the importer can endorsed, here import is endorsed by port trust authority, and the custom office will permit to take the possession of imported goods. Then the next stage will be the warehouses. For the convenience of the importers who do not have own godowns, the port authorities maintain large warehouses. They charge a reasonable rent. If the importer is not in immediate need of goods and he want to re-export them, he can store the goods in warehouses. So for the convenience of the importers who do not have their own godowns, this is the facility of warehouse which is given by the port authority, where these importers can keep their goods in the warehouses, or these port officers or port authorities will charge the reasonable rate to the importers, and if the importer is not in immediate need of the goods and he want to re-export them, then he can store those goods in the warehouses that are in the ports. So in this case, the importer is required to execute a bond wherein he undertakes to pay the duty on goods on taking delivery. So this was all about the procedure and formalities of the importer. So here we are done with our chapter, that is international trade. I hope you understood this chapter very well. Let's continue our next chapter in next class. Thank you.